My fiance's mom tried to cancel our wedding while I was in the hospital. I, 27F, used to think I was one of the lucky ones. I found my person, Tyler, 29M, the kind of guy who, when he says I've got you, actually means it. The kind of guy who offers you the last fry without making a big deal about it. We've been together for almost 4 years. I still remember the night he proposed. Cold hands, nervous smile, the whole classic movie scene thing. We were in this tiny candlelit restaurant, and he dropped the ring into my wine glass, thinking he was being original. He wasn't. I choked on a little. But hey, I said yes. After that night, wedding planning became our life. Not in the we're crazy and love Pinterest boards kind of way, but in the we want something that feels like us kind of way. We booked a historic estate outside of town. You know the kind. Ivy climbing the stone walls, big old oak trees framing a garden that looked like something out of fairy tale. We were going for a garden ceremony with handwritten vows and a custom 5-course dinner under the stars. We even hired a live string quartet because Tyler's a sucker for cello music. Don't let his flannel shirts and woodworking hobby fool you. We saved for over a year. Every spare dollar went into the wedding fund. Tyler picked up extra shifts. I took on a nightmare freelance gig editing corporate training videos that still haunt my dreams. My parents chipped in a little, mostly for the dress and invitations. His mom, Janice? Not a damn dime. Her exact words, when we gently asked if she wanted to be involved financially. I just think weddings are a waste of money. Besides, if you were really part of our family, you'd have a small backyard ceremony like I did. More authentic. Authentic. Meanwhile, she'd show up uninvited to our venue walkthroughs and critique the place like she was on House Hunters, Colonial Nightmare Edition. At the tasting, she brought Tupperware. I'm not kidding. She opened her purse and pulled out a little plastic container and asked, "You mind if I take a bit of the risotto to my friend's dog?" He's picky. The warning signs were everywhere, but I kept telling myself, she's just one of those overbearing types. Once she sees how happy we are, she'll back off. Spoiler. She did not back off. Tyler always tried to be the buffer. He'd redirect her, distract her, once even fake choked on a breadstick so she'd stop talking about how white wasn't flattering on my skin tone. This woman had opinions on my dress when she didn't even want us to have a wedding. But for every minor annoyance, I'd shrug and remind myself that it was one day. Just one day. The rest of our lives was what mattered. And Tyler? He made the rest of my life feel like home. So we pushed forward. Invitations were sent. RSVPs rolled in. My dress had just come back from final alterations. We were a week out. Exactly 1 week from I do. And then my appendix decided to stage a rebellion. 1 minute I was taste testing cake fillings. The next I was hunched over in the bridal shop bathroom, sweating bullets and thinking I was dying. Tyler rushed me to the ER. I barely remember the ride. Just pain and him gripping my hand like he could will it away. Emergency appendectomy. 3 days in the hospital, barely able to stand without help. My abdomen looked like it had been in a bar fight. I cried the night after the surgery. Not because the wedding might be off, but because I couldn't even go pee without calling a nurse. I felt like everything was slipping through my fingers. But Tyler never left my side. He slept on the world's most uncomfortable cot beside my bed, fielded calls from vendors, managed emails, coordinated with the officiant, and even managed to reassure both moms, mine easily, Janice not so much. "You just rest," he'd say. "I got this." He did, until one afternoon, when he had to step out to pick up his tux and finalize a few last-minute things with the officiant. Just a couple of hours. I remember joking, "Try not to let my mom and Janice murder each other while you're gone." He laughed, kissed my forehead, and left. And in those few hours, everything unraveled. And believe me, what Janice did next wasn't just controlling or passive-aggressive. It was calculated, cold, almost surgical in how she dismantled everything we built. But I'll get to that. For now, all I knew was that I was in a hospital bed, weak as hell, trying to focus on recovery, and something was about to go very wrong. There's something surreal about being trapped in your own body. Like you're there, fully aware, trying to process the world, but the world keeps moving and you're stuck watching it like a ghost in a bad dream. That's how it felt, lying in that hospital bed, clutching at my abdomen every time I dared to laugh or even shift. The nurses were kind, efficient, and a little overstretched. The food was bland. The ceiling tiles all had cracks in slightly different patterns, and I found myself naming them just to stay sane. Tyler had turned into some kind of superhero. Not the cape-wearing kind, but the one who balances bags of takeout, vendor phone calls, and my pain med schedule without missing a beat. He even brought me a little handheld fan one afternoon, knowing how stuffy the room felt to me. One of those small, thoughtful things that says more than grand gestures ever could. Despite the pain and discomfort, there was this comfort too, knowing we'd been through a minor crisis and we're handling it together. That's what marriage is supposed to be, right? A little preview of sickness and health and all that jazz. I let myself feel hopeful, but as it always goes, hope can be a fragile thing. Tyler left around noon that Thursday. I remember the time because I made a joke about missing the lunch tray roulette and asked him to sneak me something real on his way back. He smiled, promised dumplings, and told me he'd only be gone for a few hours. He meant well. He had no idea what was waiting behind him. See, while I was busy watching dust motes in the sunlight, Janice had been circling. Not physically, not yet, but she'd been busy. Tyler had mentioned that she offered to help out while he ran errands. Said she wanted to ease my stress and pitch in, now that she saw how much we had going on. I didn't think too hard about it. I wasn't exactly in a position to argue or investigate. When you're groggy on painkillers and every movement feels like someone took a baseball bat to your gut, it's easy to nod and say, sure, let her help. That's how it started. While I slept in and out of a drug daze, she made her rounds. But instead of offering help, she took control. Complete control. I didn't even know anything was wrong until later that evening, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was polite, professional, and confused. It was the venue manager. She said she was calling to confirm the cancellation. My cancellation. Our cancellation. For a 10-year-old's birthday party. I remember lying there, cold sweat breaking out across my skin, even though the room was warm. At first, I thought she had the wrong person. It had to be a mistake. But no. She read off my name, the date of our wedding, and calmly explained that a woman claiming to be the groom's mother had come in with a cancellation form. Said the wedding was off because of a private elopement due to a medical emergency. That medical emergency being me. She had apparently told the venue staff that I wasn't well, that I was emotionally unstable from stress. That Tyler and I had chosen to skip the ceremony entirely and elope in secret. And then, to make matters worse, she handed them a printed cancellation form with my signature on it. Only, I never signed anything. That's when it clicked. She had forged it. My name. My writing. She had copied my signature well enough to fool them. I had been unconscious or half-conscious, recovering from surgery, while she was out there dismantling my wedding. I didn't cry. Not yet. Something about the absurdity of it just froze me. Like, who even does that? Once I hung up the phone, I tried calling Tyler. No answer. He was still out, still blissfully unaware of the nuclear bomb his mother had just dropped on our lives. So I called the florist next, and that's when the second shoe dropped. The flowers had been canceled, too. The caterer? Told to change the entire menu to something more child-friendly. Sliders, mini corn dogs, Capri Suns. The DJ? Instructed to bring pop music and birthday tracks instead of our classical string quartet selections. Even the dress shop had received a call claiming the wedding had been postponed indefinitely and the gown could be held off. She had gone on a cancellation rampage, and nobody thought to check in with me because, apparently, I was the unwell bride. The worst part wasn't even the forged documents or the sheer manipulation. The worst part was that she planned this. She had waited for a moment when she could strike without resistance, and she found it while I was lying in a hospital bed, cut open, stitched up, and drugged out of my mind. When Tyler finally called back, I didn't even try to sound calm. I told him everything, from the venue to the forged signature to the DJ's playlist, now being packed with Baby Shark and Happy Birthday. He was stunned. Disbelief quickly gave way to anger. I could hear it in his voice. That quiet, trembling rage that only comes when someone has crossed the line so far there's no going back. Within an hour, he was at the hospital helping me into a wheelchair. We left, against all medical advice, and headed straight to the venue. And there she was, Janice, standing in the garden, decorating with rainbow balloons and streamer garlands. A piñata swaying gently in the breeze. It looked like a second-grade carnival. She was surrounded by folding chairs, cake boxes, and a huge banner that said, "Happy Birthday, Melody." She saw us and smiled like we were guests arriving early to the party. Like everything was fine. Like she hadn't just lit a match and torched the most important day of our lives. I couldn't even speak. My chest ached, not from the stitches, but from betrayal. What she did wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding, or overstepping, or even a bad decision. It was war. And something in me shifted in that moment. Some quiet line inside me snapped. Because I realized she wasn't just meddling or even trying to ruin a wedding. She was trying to erase me. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I was still in a wheelchair, wrapped in a hospital blanket with a tote bag in my lap full of meds and documents. I hadn't even changed out of my hospital socks. The nurse had argued hard against me leaving, but I couldn't sit still in that room while my wedding was being hijacked. Tyler pushed me up the gravel path with this quiet, mechanical focus. I didn't say much. Neither of us did. There was too much to process. It felt like stepping into an alternate reality, like we'd been flipped into some nightmare version of our lives. We had planned a garden ceremony with rose garlands and live music. Instead, there were hot pink balloons, a glittery unicorn banner, and folding chairs arranged like it was an elementary school recital. And Janice? She was beaming, laughing with a couple of unfamiliar women who were helping her set things up. Probably relatives of Melody, the birthday girl. When she saw us, her expression didn't change. No shame, no panic, not even surprise. Just a light, almost patronizing concern, like we were kids crashing a grown-up's plan. She walked over, casually wiping frosting off her fingers with a paper napkin. I can't remember exactly what I said first. It wasn't a coherent sentence. I think I tried to ask what she was doing, but it came out like a half-breath. Tyler's voice was steadier, but not by much. He demanded to know what the hell she thought she was doing. Why she lied to the venue. Why she forged documents. Why she canceled everything. Her response? It wasn't a defense. There were no excuses, no fake apologies. Just this infuriating calmness. This holier-than-thou attitude she always carried around like a badge of honor. She told us we were too young to see the bigger picture. That family comes first. That Melody's birthday couldn't be postponed. It's once in a lifetime. And then she had the audacity to say we'd thank her one day. That she had saved Tyler from making a mistake. That this wedding was never going to work out. And deep down, we both knew it. I've never wanted to scream so badly in my life. But I didn't. I just sat there, frozen in my chair, gripping the blanket so tightly my nails left marks on my palms. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about a venue, or a birthday, or a wedding dress. This was something deeper, something calculated. This woman had never accepted me, never liked me. She smiled in front of Tyler, acted sweet and innocent in public. But the moment she had a sliver of control, she used it to try and erase me from her son's life. And it wasn't even subtle. As we sat in the car afterward, shell-shocked and quiet, Tyler told me something I'll never forget. Something that made my stomach twist into knots tighter than any surgical stitch. The night before all this happened, she had come over to his place. She brought him soup, her go-to comfort move. She told him she was worried about me, that I seemed mentally unstable, that the wedding stress had broken me. She told him he didn't have to go through with it, that it wasn't too late to walk away. She said I was sick, that he deserved better. He hadn't told me this earlier because he didn't want to upset me while I was recovering. He thought, hoped, that it was just her being overbearing again, that maybe she'd back off if he ignored her. But now he knew better. This wasn't overbearing. This was a full-blown campaign. She tried to cancel our wedding. But more than that, she tried to end our relationship. While I was sedated and vulnerable, she crept into the cracks and tried to rip us apart from the inside out. And the part that wrecks me? She did it all with this twisted sense of righteousness, like she genuinely believed she was protecting him. That the lies, the forgery, the manipulation, it was all worth it if it kept her son from marrying me. We sat in the parking lot outside the venue for what felt like hours. I could barely look at Tyler without crying, and I didn't want to cry. Not over her. Not now. Not after everything. Instead, I asked him one question. Why didn't she think I was good enough? He didn't have an answer, and that's when I realized it wasn't about me at all. It never had been. I could have been anyone, smart, beautiful, kind, rich, whatever, and it still wouldn't have been enough. because she didn't want Tyler to have a partner. She wanted him to stay locked in this cycle, orbiting around her like a planet she owned. That's what this was about, control. She saw me as a threat to that control. So she did what she's probably done to other people in her life. She tried to eliminate the threat. But she forgot something crucial. I wasn't alone. Tyler wasn't alone. And she had just drawn a line that couldn't be undone. That night, back at our apartment, we made a decision. We weren't just going to quietly rebuild. We were going to show people what really happened. Because this wasn't just a private family spat. It was deception on a public scale. The vendors needed to know. The venue staff needed to know. Hell, even her church group needed to know. And I was done being the quiet, polite bride-to-be. The one who bit her tongue at Janice's jabs and tried to keep the peace. That version of me was stitched up and left behind in that hospital bed. The new version? She was pissed, and she was ready to fight back. I've always believed that when someone shows you who they are, you should believe them. But I also used to believe people could change if you just gave them enough time, patience, and empathy. That they'd come around, maybe grow into someone softer if you love them hard enough. After that day, though, after what Janice pulled, I stopped believing that. We didn't go back to the hospital. I couldn't. My body ached, but not nearly as much as everything else. The emotional weight sat so much heavier than the stitches pulling at my side. I couldn't get comfortable, couldn't sleep. Eventually, I pulled out my laptop. Not for work or emails, for facts. I wanted to see what else she had done. Because if she forged one signature, canceled one service, who knew how deep it really went? That was when we found out just how far she took it. First, the venue. We contacted them again and asked for everything, forms, copies, emails. They sent over a scan of the signed cancellation document. My name looked perfect, almost too perfect. I realized later that it wasn't written. It was lifted from our RSVP reply card. She had cut and scanned it, pasted it in like she was making a ransom note. Then came the florist. We called them to reinstate the order, hoping it hadn't been scrapped entirely. The florist was kind, but sounded unsure, said Janice had canceled the bouquet selection entirely and replaced it with seasonal balloons and floral arrangements more appropriate for children. They had a new order slip with her name on it. Not Tyler's. Not mine. Hers. The DJ had received an entirely new playlist. A literal PDF titled Melody's Big Day, Party Hits. She'd even sent an email to our officiant, claiming that due to unforeseen family issues, the wedding was postponed. And again, she signed it as me. We started making a list. Every vendor. Every service. She didn't just cancel. She replaced. She had coordinated the whole thing like it was her own event. She called in favors, rearranged contracts, printed custom invitations for Melody's party. She hadn't just sabotaged the wedding. She had transformed it into something else entirely. It had all happened in a matter of 2 days. Maybe 3. That kind of planning doesn't just happen on impulse. She'd been preparing, probably waiting for the exact moment she could pounce. And the moment she saw I was down, medically, physically, emotionally, she moved in, like a shark that smells blood. Tyler sat in stunned silence for most of this. He kept shaking his head like the truth wouldn't stick. I saw it in his face. The part of him that still wanted to believe his mom was just overbearing, just a little misguided. Not a liar, not a manipulator, not this. But we couldn't ignore it anymore. She had taken our wedding, a year's worth of planning, thousands of dollars, a day meant to celebrate love, and replaced it with balloons, streamers, and a glitter piñata. All for a 10-year-old girl who probably had no clue what was going on. I couldn't help but wonder what Melody's parents thought. Were they in on it? Did they believe the story Janice fed them? That the venue just magically opened up? That a garden estate normally booked 6 months out was suddenly available for their child's birthday? Or had Janice spun the lie so convincingly they never questioned it? None of it mattered, really. The damage was already done. But here's what did matter. We weren't going to take it lying down. Tyler started making calls, one after the other. He spoke to a lawyer friend from college, who immediately said what she did could absolutely be grounds for legal action. Forging a signature? Fraud. Misrepresentation to a business? Legal exposure. Not to mention the potential financial consequences of derailing a wedding. Non-refundable fees, lost deposits, emotional distress. The lawyer told us to document everything. Every canceled order, every forged document, every email, every voicemail, every vendor she misled. And we did. But while Tyler handled the legal end, I started thinking about something else. Something that sat in my gut, simmering. This woman hadn't just messed with a wedding. She had tried to destroy me. She told people I was unstable, that I was emotionally unwell, unreliable, and had backed out of my own wedding in some dramatic meltdown. She made me look weak and unhinged to everyone around us, all while playing the concerned, selfless mother. And people believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was so damn good at playing nice. Janice could look a priest in the eye and lie about the weather, then offer him tea with a smile. I decided then that silence wasn't enough. She wasn't going to get to hide behind her little suburban mask and move on like none of this happened. No. She wanted to make it public? Fine. So I started writing. I didn't name call. I didn't rant. I didn't scream into the void. What I wrote was measured, detailed, and full of receipts. I opened with the basics, that I had been in the hospital recovering from emergency surgery when my wedding, a year in the making, was secretly canceled. Then I explained how it happened. The forged documents, the calls to vendors, the replaced event with a 10-year-old's birthday party. I attached photos of the venue decorated with balloons, the new DJ playlist, even the scanned cancellation form with my falsified signature. And then I said the thing that made it real for anyone reading, that while I was sedated and alone in a hospital bed, my future mother-in-law told the venue I was mentally unwell and unstable, and that she hoped her son would come to his senses before marrying me. I tagged Janice. I tagged the venue, the caterer, the DJ, the florist, not to blame them, but to show people this was real. This happened. These were professionals who had been duped, too. And then, for the cherry on top, I tagged Janice's church group. It took maybe 10 minutes for it to start blowing up. Comments flooded in. Friends, acquaintances, even people I barely knew from high school or old jobs. They were horrified. People couldn't believe it. Some assumed I was exaggerating, until I posted screenshots. The forged signature, the email from the DJ, the confirmation from the florist. There was no room for doubt. Within an hour, the post had hundreds of shares. And then something wild happened. Other people started commenting with their own Janice stories. Turns out, she had a history of sabotage, of manipulation. One woman from their church said Janice once faked a medical emergency to cancel a youth retreat because her son wasn't chosen as a volunteer leader. Another said Janice told her teenage daughter not to wear white to prom because some girls can't pull off light colors with wide hips. She was a tyrant dressed as a PDA mom. By morning, Tyler was awake. I showed him the post, bracing for him to be upset. He wasn't. He read every word in silence, then scrolled through the comments. He didn't say much, just nodded, then said he was proud of me. That meant more than I can describe. It was around 10 a.m. when we got the first call from Janice. We didn't answer. Then came the texts, the voicemails. First, she tried guilt, said I was ruining her reputation, twisting the story, embarrassing the family. Then she moved to denial, claimed she didn't forge anything, that it was a misunderstanding. Then came anger. She accused me of brainwashing Tyler, said I had turned him against his own mother. Tyler blocked her number. We weren't done, though. With legal help, we compiled everything into a formal report and delivered it to the venue's legal team. Once they saw the evidence, they not only reinstated our original contract, they offered us a partial refund for the disruption. They even offered a statement clarifying that the cancellation had been done fraudulently, that we, the couple, had never backed out. We rebooked everything. Same venue, same caterer, same florist, even the same quartet. Every vendor was on our side now, and most of them were genuinely angry on our behalf. And this time, we added security. It wasn't about being dramatic, it was necessary, because Janice didn't go quietly. She kept posting cryptic Bible verses online, stuff about false witnesses and families torn apart by liars. She even emailed a few distant relatives, trying to paint herself as the victim. Most ignored her. A few didn't, but we didn't care. At this point, the people who believed her were the same ones who would have judged us no matter what. And then, the day of the wedding came. I wasn't fully healed, but I didn't care. I wheeled myself down the aisle, white dress flowing around the wheels, stitches still aching beneath satin layers. The guests stood and clapped, not because I was the most glamorous bride, but because I was standing in defiance of everything Janice tried to destroy. The ceremony was beautiful. We cried through our vows. The food was perfect. The music played until midnight. And Janice? She tried to show up. We were told by security she arrived halfway through the reception in a pale pink dress and a forced smile, claiming she deserved to see her son's special day. They turned her away at the gates while she yelled that I had poisoned her boy. People outside clapped. Inside, we danced. There's no happy ending where she and I reconcile. There's no moment where we hug and make peace. Tyler hasn't spoken to her since, and we're okay with that, because sometimes family doesn't mean blood. Sometimes it means the people who choose you over and over again, even when you're messy, stitched up, and rolling down the aisle in pain. Sometimes love is the loudest revenge of all.